So the first domino you think that's going to fall? What do you think, Tom? Free agency's around the corner. The window in which the negotiating window, is that what we're calling it? What's the official phrase?
Negotiating window.
Got it.
NFL free agent negotiating window.
And that starts when? When is it
noon
officially?
Noon Eastern on Monday.
Okay, great. When we come on the air on Monday, Chris, you'll be a busy bee.
Cannot wait.
We will be live doing our own free agency frenzy, if you will.
We need lots of Patriots updates, Tom.
Okay, very good. What do you think is going to be the first domino to fall? Is it going to be a quarterback, Darnold? Is it going to be DK Metcalf? Who do you think it's going to be? What's your guess, Tom?
In my mind, the story of the offseason is not free agency, just because there are some guys who are going to get paid big money, but it's probably going to be people that average fans or even loyal viewers of your show, Rich, have never heard of. When Dio Adenabo gets a monster deal, when Milton Williams, who granted made his name in the Super Bowl, when he gets a huge deal, when Aaron Banks, a guard, gets $18 million a year, that's probably not going to move the needle a whole lot in terms of the public consciousness. To me, the story is you've still got, depending on how you do the math, 8 or 9 teams who we don't know who their starting quarterback is in 2025. A lot of that's going to play out even in the next 72 hours here in terms of teams having to make decisions, potentially deadlines being set, because if you're not going to get the guy who might be your top choice, you got to pivot to plan B before plan B and plan C vanish come noon Eastern time on Monday. So I would say some of the initial dominoes here are going to be what happens with Sam Darnold. The Vikings have an offer out to him. They have been in talks. They chose not to use the franchise tag, which is probably a pretty good indication that Sam Darnold's market is a little bit lighter than what people had been expecting on the outside. The Sam Darnold decided to go back on effectively a 1-year deal in Minnesota and, be the guy until he's not the guy with J.J. McCarthy sitting there breathing down his neck. Does he decide I'm going to go someplace else, whether that's on another 1-year deal or it's on a multi-year deal? There are several teams that have an interest level in Sam Darnold, but I don't get the sense that there's somebody blowing him away with a monster multi-year contract. Otherwise, you probably already would have had the Vikings pivoting off of that and going to the next thing. So that's one of the big dominoes here, which in turn impacts the likes of Daniel Jones, who would be in all likelihood plan B, in addition to obviously having J.J. McCarthy there. Another big domino is in Pittsburgh, where Ian Rappaport said it the other day, they've been negotiating with Justin Fields. That appears to be plan A. Russell Wilson's waiting to see what happens in Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers, to a certain degree, is waiting to see what happens in Pittsburgh. And then you've got some other unresolved quarterback situations around the league. Obviously, the Saints and Derek Carr, he's got a big vesting next week. Are they going to be able to work out some type of a modification to that contract? Do they eventually just bring him back on the existing contract? Those are some of the questions here. And then obviously, the Seahawks have talked with Geno Smith. They're going to do something to that contract. Is it something that's, to Geno's liking? Those are some of the moving parts that we've got that still have to be resolved here. So the quarterback is a huge part of it. And that's in addition, teams I didn't even mention there, the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jets. All those teams need starting quarterback answers here. Those dominoes will start moving, I believe, even in the next 72 hours here before we get to free agency. The wide receiver spot, there's not a whole lot there in free agency. With T. Higgins getting tagged, and listen, that could be a tag and trade. There's certainly been interest in T. Higgins. If the Bengals are willing to trade him, the odds they're trading T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson at a time that Assistant General Manager Joe Burrow would definitely not like those guys to be leaving town. I would say it's unlikely that they trade both of those players. In a perfect world, they get deals done with all of them. Trey Hendrickson, though, they're just not there at this point. But, with T off the market, your top wide receiver is probably Chris Godwin, who's a third contract player coming off of an injury. But I anticipate Chris Godwin, if the Bucs don't bring him back, is going to do very well on the open market. And then you got a lot of those, those older players, the Keenan Allens of the world. What is somebody, willing to give him? It's probably going to be a shorter term type of a contract. DK is clearly, and I put this out in the initial tweet reporting on his trade request that the Seattle Seahawks agreed to explore, was he immediately becomes the top wide receiver out there at a time that you got 9 or 10 teams that are all looking for a number one or, worst case, a number two type of a wide receiver. And so John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, has been open about it. They're talking to a ton of teams. There are a bunch of teams that are interested in this, but DK is also, he's got 1 year and $18 million left on his contract. Ideally, he's going to get a new deal out of this, and the new team is going to want a new deal with DK Metcalf in order to give up the type of draft capital that the Seahawks would be wanting to get. So DK could be the first domino in the receiver market. That potentially could even happen as soon as this weekend. But if they don't get the type of compensation they're wanting, there's no reason that John Schneider has to do anything prior to draft week. Because, again, just like in other situations, if you get past the draft, now you're downgrading. You're not getting guys who can help you right now. So whether that's in the next couple of days or that's still a month away, we'll see. But this is very real with the DK Metcalf trade market. And then the third part of this is the edge rusher market. A big one fell yesterday. Max Crosby, or 2 days ago now, I'm losing track of time.
Yeah.
Max Crosby agreeing to a deal at $35.5 million per year on a 3-year extension. He's now signed up for 5 years. That situation, Rich, was truly edgy. I know it's been out there that the deal came together quickly. They'd really been talking about it, but they weren't there on some things in terms of structure and cash flow. That came together relatively quickly when his agents went in to Las Vegas. But if that had gone another direction, if they weren't able to get that deal done, Rich, I think we'd be sitting here talking about Max Crosby being another guy who's on the trade market, because there were a bunch of teams hovering around and hoping that things blew up there, and they would have been willing to come in and offer a lot to bring Max someplace else. So now, okay, if you want a top caliber edge rusher, where else are you looking? Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks last year. The Bengals don't do many trades, but they're allowing him to seek permission to do a deal. That could be a big domino in this entire thing. Micah Parsons, I know there have been initial talks on a contract in Dallas. If he doesn't get a deal, sooner than later, they're going to get calls. I don't know if they're going to do anything with those calls, but if teams are looking at this and saying, why haven't they wrapped him up at a time that Max Crosby being the first non-quarterback to reset the highest paid non-quarterback market, Rich? Everybody else now, whether that's Micah Parsons, whether that's TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, whether that's Aiden Hutchinson, Jamar Chase, of course, in Cincinnati, everybody's going to be looking at this going, why aren't they moving more quickly on Micah? I anticipate they're going to get calls as well, because if you're into that edge rusher market, you're either paying $18-20 million for Dio Adenabo from the Colts, again, not exactly a household name, or you're taking a swing on maybe some of those older pass rushers who are available, the Matt Judons and Hassan Reddicks and Chase Youngs of the world. Those are all, it's a really interesting scenario here, Rich, because again, and I don't mean to discount free agency, by the way, because we'll be doing all day free agency frenzy on NFL Network, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But in my mind, the big news that's going to come out of this weekend and then into that early portion of next week, leading up to the official start of the league here on Wednesday, is going to be the teams who look out into a free agent market that's just not that robust at a lot of the core positions, and a draft that, particularly at places like receiver and quarterback, you may not be able to fill your needs, and going, who do we trade for? What can we come up with? And there may be even some things right now, Rich, that are not necessarily being contemplated publicly. The teams might be taking some swings at here in the next few days.
Yeah, and that's always the surprises. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.